So it's a non-relational database, right? So you all know the popular way to represent structure information is a relational database, whereas NoSQL is a non-relational database that does not require fixed schema, right? So again, you would have seen the relational databases, you need a schema to describe the structure of the data that is being stored in a database. So here it does not require any fixed schema, database schema. So it avoids joins, right? So NoSQL it does not support joins, and it is easy to scale, right? So the scalability is the major advantage of this NoSQL. So you can store a large volume of data, right? So it's a non-relational in nature. It has fixed. It does not have any fixed schema. It doesn't have any schema, or it has some relaxed schema, and it avoids joins. And finally, it can be used to scale and store a large volume of data, right? So the concept of NoSQL, it became popular with the internet giants like Google, Facebook, Amazon, who deal with huge volumes of data. They want some platform to store and process the data, right? So social media websites, they started using this NoSQL databases to store big data, right? So in the year 1998, Carlo Strozzi, he uses NoSQL, right? So Carlo Strozzi uses NoSQL for lightweight, open
So the
source,
PPT stopped
relational data,
sharing.
right? So I think I have some, it's slow. Now I think it's, I will make it visible. So there was some interruption. Right. So NoSQL is a lightweight open source relational database, right? So we work on it because now it's an open source technology. So NoSQL databases never follow the relational model. It is either schema free or it has relaxed schemas, right? So this is the intro to NoSQL, right? I think the screen is visible right now.
Yes, sir.
Right. So these are the properties of NoSQL databases. They do not follow relational schema, right? They do not have a schema, or they have some relaxed schema. So they become popular by some social media websites like Amazon, Facebook, Google, who want to store large volume of data, right? So they were used by this social media service providers to store large volume of data. So NoSQL is a open source, lightweight, relational database, right? So let us study the features of NoSQL. So first feature is that it's non-relational in nature, right? So they do not follow the relational model. It does not provide tables with fixed column records, right? So in the case of relational model, we have tables to store data and to represent the relationship between the data. We use records to store the information, right? So here it does not provide support to relational model. It never provides tables with flat fixed column records. It works with self-contained aggregates or binary large objects, right? So NoSQL databases, they work with self-contained objects or binary large objects, right? So it does not require any object relational mapping and normalization, right? So whatever we have studied, normalization that can be applied to structured data, object relational mapping, right? So they are not applicable to NoSQL databases. And the second feature is that you all know that so NoSQL databases are either schema free, so they don't have any database schema, or they have a relaxed schema, right? So basically schema is the data definition of the data that is being stored in a database. So it does not require any sort of definition of the schema of the data, right? So the next feature of NoSQL is that it offers easy to use interface for storing and querying the data, right? So any database model, the objective is to store the data and retrieve the data in an efficient manner. So it provides some simple API to store the data as well as to query the data in an efficient manner, right? So this application programming interfaces, it allows low level data manipulation and selection of data, right? So the different types of APIs used in NoSQL or HTTP REST protocol and JSON, right? So they are together used for working with NoSQL databases, right? So it uses some simple API, which is HTTP REST with JSON. So the idea behind this API is to for efficient storage and retrieval of data in the NoSQL database. And finally, the last feature is that distributed, right? So NoSQL databases can be executed in a distributed fashion. So it provides auto scaling and failover capabilities, right? So like the entire system will not fail in the case of NoSQL, since the data is distributed across multiple machines. Even if one or two nodes fail, you will be able to work with the other nodes, right? So ACID properties are the key properties of relational database management system, whereas in NoSQL databases, ACID properties are sacrificed for scalability and throughput, right? So to provide more scalability, so that you can scale the data to large volume of data, and throughput is going to be the number of queries answered in unit time, right? So it sacrifices this ACID properties for scalability and throughput, and it does not guarantee consistency. However, it provides eventual consistency, right? So we'll study how it provides eventual consistency in the later slides, right? So in the case of normal DBMS, any database system should be consistent. So any database that is consistent before the execution of a transaction should remain consistent even after the end of this transaction. However, in NoSQL databases, the consistency property is sacrificed for scalability and throughput, right? And finally, it supports shared nothing architecture, right? So since it supports shared nothing architecture, it enables less coordination and higher data distribution, right? So these are the properties of NoSQL databases, right? So they are non-relational in nature. You need not have a table-like format to store the data. They are schema free, or they have relaxed schema, right? So data definition is not part of NoSQL databases, right? And it uses simple API like REST API with JSON for efficient storage and retrieval of data. And finally, distributed in nature, right? So NoSQL databases are executed in a distributed fashion. So it provides auto scaling and failover capabilities. So even if one node fails, we'll be able to answer the other queries using the available nodes, right? So you don't have ACID properties in the case of NoSQL databases. It sacrifices the ACID properties for scalability and throughput. It does not guarantee consistency. It provides only eventual consistency. And finally, it follows a shared nothing architecture, right? So in today's class, I will just study the 4 categories of NoSQL databases, right? So